It's that funky slide guitar music that comes in every Monday through Friday, live at 5 on Evil Hippie Network, YouTube. Check us out, subscribe, check my Newswire, Roy Blecker. You'll see my nice, smiling, shining face. And, looks like the Trump Department of Justice may be making AR-15's 50 state legal. I wonder what kind of magazines are going to throw it out. We'll have an update on that story. Little Marco had some pretty good quips as he was sitting in for the very pregnant press secretary for Donald J., Caroline Leavitt. Lots and lots and lots more. We'll have some polling information and maybe a couple retro stories from back in the day. But it was definitely a mudslinging California governor debate. The California governor's race definitely has heated up. Man, the gloves were off last night at the CNN debate. Alex Michelson and the nasty woman, Caitlin Collins, did a good job. They let him rock and roll with it. They didn't just, 20 seconds this and 30 seconds that and 10 seconds this. And wait for Eric Swalwell to fart. Well, I guess we could bring him back. But no, it was a very, very, very raucous, bare knuckles, let's get down in the mud and wrestling like politics should be. Let's roll off with the first clip. Here we go.
Mr. Hilton, go ahead.
It's not Donald Trump who's given us gas prices $2 higher than the rest of the country. It's Democrat policies, which Antonio and all the Democrats here support. It's not Donald Trump that's given us the highest housing costs in the country. It's Democrat policies that all these Democrats support. Donald Trump is the president in all the other states of America where the cost of living is way lower than in California. Obviously, it is way past time for change in California, and endlessly going on about Donald Trump doesn't serve the needs of the struggling families and small businesses.
Can you say whether or not...
That was 30 seconds of absolute brilliance by Steve Hilton. Okay, $1 a gallon's from the Iran conflict over there. We get that. That's going to go away at some point. Hopefully very soon. But we're still paying $2 a gallon more than the rest of the nation. We're over 6, they're around 4. How do you explain that? Highest prices of gas. How do you explain all the deterioration? Of course, it's Gulag Gavin Newsom and Javier Baccaria and a whole host of others of nutty, tutti-frutti, left-wing loons. This is what the big, humongous problem is. Not Donald J. He has a very little effect. The federal government has a very small effect on your life. Probably way too big than it should be even today. But the policies at your state level, county level, city level, school boards, sewer cleaning commission, whatever, there's far more effect on your life than whichever president is doing what, why, and whoever. So that was about a little over 30 seconds. A brilliant, summed it up perfectly, summed up the problems of California. Now, are we going to keep voting stupid? That's the big question. We're going to pull the handle on Democrat, Union, whatever, Black, Mexican, Asian, whatever. We're just pull the straight Crook County lever D, and we're going to, hopefully, they won't beat us to death every day. Here we go. For the next trip on that, it was kind of a Bash Becerra and Steyer kind of day. We give.
What's your view of
That's a
this?
lie. My view is that it's a bit rich for Javier to talk about following the law when he is mired personally in a corruption scandal where his former chief of staff, Sean McCluskey, when Javier was appointed by Joe Biden to be health secretary, he wanted his chief of staff to go with him. The salary wasn't enough. So what did they do? They took money from Javier's campaign account to top up his salary by funneling it to Dana Williamson, Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff, so that it was paid to this guy's wife. All
Secretary
of that
Becerra, I
is
want you-
illegal. It is against state law. It's against federal law. My running mate for Attorney General, Michael Gates, has this evening written to Javier Becerra to make it clear that when he is Attorney General, Javier will be investigated
Thank you.
and,
And
if
Mr.
necessary,
Hilton-
prosecuted for these crimes.
Mr. Hilton,
Javier Baccaria maybe in some deep-ish. Of course, that investigation was going on when this money was coming out, was when he was Health and Human Services Director under Joe Biden. The Joe Biden Department of Justice, under the odious Merrick Garland, was investigating this. And rumor has it Javier Baccaria's footprints, fingerprints, are all over it. Of course, the first part is fairly easy to understand. His chief of staff, Sean McCluskey, was working for him out here before he got appointed, and actually the District of Criminals job paid less than California, so that makes sense of that. The Dana Williamson, funneled through Dana Williamson, I think is where Steve Hilton, this is where I differ on. Not saying that she didn't get. Baccaria knew he was going to run for governor in 24 or in 26. 24, they're out. Donald J's elected. Dana the Hammer Williamson is chief of staff for Gavin Newsom, Governor Emeritus of California. She's holding the hammer and she's got all the connections to run. Was that a political payoff from Javier Baccaria to Dana the Hammer Williamson to get Gavin Newsom's contact support, knows that he has a lot of influence and can direct a lot of money in any candidate's way to succeed him as governor? Win, lose, or draw, Newsom's a very powerful, maybe one of the most powerful figures in California, at least politically. Yeah, maybe Willie Brown still holds that, but we'll see. He's getting up, 91? But don't count him out. So, funneled through, I think it was, I would investigate, and I would say the allegation for me is that money was a payoff to Dana the Hammer Williamson to round up, get Gavin Newsom's support, get Gavin Newsom to raise money, get all the, get everybody in line for his governor's campaign in 26. It all blew apart. His big problem is Donald J. and now Todd Blanche is in charge of the Department of Justice. And now that Blanche is in, the indictments seem to start flowing. So here's more on good old Javier Baccaria.
Let me just say something about what Javier Becerra has refused to answer, and that is that your chief of staff was indicted for padding his salary with your campaign funds. You initially on CNN said that you knew that you signed it, you knew that they spent $10,000, and then on the second time on your show, you said you didn't know. The fact is, as I said, I think
That's
you have
not
to
true.
answer. You had two committees. You spent $1,500 for one and $10,000 for
Don't you
the
get
other.
the fact?
But let me just say something.
So, good old Tony Villar rolled it out there, saying, hey, you acknowledged it one time and then you're denying it. Were you lying? You should have said, were you lying then or are you lying now? Who do we believe? We're going to roll with more of this Oh, it was a heck of a debate. Finally, we got one. We finally got one. The third time as a charm, the world revolves around the number 3. We get the third debate. We finally got what we were looking for. And boy, it's delicious. We'll get on with more of this here on the rest of today's show. There it is. Jump right into more of the raucous debate, conference mudslinging. We love it every single day of, yes, mudslinging. California debate. California's governor's race heats up. Here's the next one. This is where I think they got a problem. I think Bacaria's got a big problem. This is Willie Brown endorsing Tom Steyer.
I am for Tom Steyer, and I want to tell the world I'm for Tom Steyer. And based on the issues that I think are important for the governorship, full and complete brain power to absorb and understand the issues, and a willingness not to allow yourself to be persuaded by any political convenience. It's got to be because you believe it's for the best of all of us. That's what Tom shows. I am for Tom.
Yes, he is for Tom Steyer. Willie doesn't bet on the losing horses. That to me is a signal. The Baccaria, I was giving it, even if he gets in, I was thinking, well, it probably isn't. I'm up in the odds to around 10 to 15%. If Baccaria gets in the top 2, he's going to be indicted. He may be indicted anyway. It just will speed it up. He will be indicted after June 2nd if he's in the top 2. Because I don't think Willie believes that about Tom Steyer. That guy looks like, he looks like he's spazzing out when he's up there. And to say, I made billions in the oil industry, and the oil industry is bad. Willie knows Tom is the biggest hypocrite, maybe of them all up there. We had Exjade Hijinosa, who was chair of White House domestic policy under the Biden administration and worked directly with Javier Baccaria when he was HHS secretary for Joe Biden in the District of Criminals. She said this.
Because when I saw him in the administration, and I think a lot of people did, and that it's people understand this, he was not effective in governing. And I think that a lot of people in the Biden administration are talking about this because
look at Van Jones with the wide eyes going, holy bleeping crap.
Realize that he was not an effective HHS secretary. And if you ask any cabinet secretary, they would tell you the same thing. And so I think that there is I think people recognize this, and I think this is why Tom Steyer has gone to the top.
So there's Hijinosa, who was one of the top officials in the Biden administration, says ask any cabinet secretary, he was a dunce. Van Jones going like, oh crap. Not another Swalwell 2.0 is coming down the pike. Michael Trujillo reposted this on X. He's a Villar guy. He was former spokesman for Dr. Jill Biden. Hijinosa's assessment last night on CNN was more accurate than most widely held view about him, at least in the first 2 years in the White House. But he also wasn't Biden's first choice. His first choice, who was offered and accepted that job offer either. So Michael LaRosa Another head official said, yeah, he's a dim bulb. Michael Trujillo putting out from the administration that brought you Trump 2.0 is now hoisting on a California FBI file to Baccaria. Granholm, Ron Klain, Karen Skelton. I'm not convinced Baccaria, he may melt down in the next 3 weeks. Maybe not as bad as the spy Swalwell. We'll see. I think this one will even get him worse. Where's all the kids, the 500,000, 300,000 that were lost? Most of them either sexed or labor trafficked under HHS, under the open borders policy, under Health and Human Services, Javier Baccaria, and the odious Joe Biden.
Question for you on another issue that has come up repeatedly during this campaign. You're actually part of a lawsuit against Sheriff Bianco here over his seizure of more than 500,000 ballots.
That's correct.
That was brought up earlier in Riverside County from last year's election. He says he's investigating allegations of election fraud. Election officials say that
I thought it was this is the election fraud. We'll get to the kids one in a second.
those claims aren't valid. Do you believe that the sheriff here committed a crime?
The sheriff is supposed to enforce the law. In this case, Sheriff Bianco violated the law. There are ways that you treat ballots. You have to maintain the integrity of every ballot. So you know, I know, we all know that no one will tamper with your ballot. There is a chain of custody requirement that the law says you have to follow in order to let that ballot move anywhere. Sheriff Bianco,
I believe he broke the law.
Sheriff Bianco didn't follow that process. He violated the
We're
law
not talking
as
about
the
elections.
sheriff.
Judge Jay Keel ordered Sheriff Chad to have the ballots with a subpoena. Javier, Sheriff Chad did not do anything illegal. If he did it what the judge did. If he was doing illegal activity, the judge said, no, you don't get the ballots. We'll have the Supreme Court weigh in on it. We'll see.
So absolutely, that's why we are suing
talking
him
about
to
the
get back
election.
the ballots. He cannot claim
that's
under
not the
cover of
lawsuit.
an investigation that he has the right to take these ballots and break that chain of custody. That's against the law. That's why we're suing, and that's why he's going to lose in the Supreme Court.
Sheriff Bianco?
It's not true. None of that is true. This is all political so he could get his name in the papers that he's suing for all of it.
It is
It's all
true,
garbage.
Sheriff Bianco.
You don't know anything about it.
Yes, I
so-
do.
Can I
It is
answer?
true.
Can I answer?
You broke the law.
Can I answer? I am tasked, elected and tasked with enforcing the law in Riverside County. And part of that is fraud. Election fraud is against the law. There is absolutely nothing we did that was illegal. And the real issue here is the Attorney General just doesn't want them counted. So the issue at stake in the Supreme Court is whether he has the authority to order me to not do an investigation. That's all this is. Don't lie. You two have no
Count the freaking ballots. Let's get it over with. 20 years ago, Riverside County was popped on this stuff before. So it's not unprecedented in Riverside County. Baccaria or Villar. You don't know because you guys didn't live it like we did. So shut the bleep up. Stuff your lawsuits up your ass. The only thing you're pissed off about is the ballots didn't get burned like they were scheduled to in a week, and then all the evidence is gone, and that's how we got screwed in 2005. So stick it right up your ass. I hope Sheriff Chad jams this, and I want an answer either way. What's wrong with counting the freaking ballots? What are you afraid of? Baccaria, Villar, Gavin Newsom, Rob Bonner? Ben Benoit, the auditor, I don't care. You think Chad is Satan the devil? Gosh. It's really almost unbelievable. Except it's true. Here I want to get to the children. Where are the children? 500,300,000 he lost under his watch at HHS with the illegal invasion. Many sex trafficked, labor trafficked. Listen to this odious. Anybody that could vote for him hates kids and probably hates themselves.
Invoked your name a few moments ago. She was talking about your leadership. Would you like to respond to her?
Yeah, I think everyone's invoking my name. It's nice to hear my name quite a bit, and they're at least pronouncing it.
It shouldn't be.
I will tell you this. Distorting the facts in your quest to be governor is never good. But using Trump lies to try to damage your opponents is worse. And that's what we see happening. Everyone knows that Trump campaigned in 2024 talking about lost kids when there were no such thing as lost kids. To hear these candidates now talk about
Trump was 100% right. Javier Baccaria is lying up his rear end. Tom Homan said we found about 300,000 of them, about 6 months ago. At least we located and knew where they're at. And that was under Baccaria's watch. Javier Baccaria didn't lose 300,000 children. He expedited their disappearance. Yes, he gave them to anybody that wanted them. No checks, no nothing. Here's Matt Mahan.
For you, California has among the highest homeless rates in the country. Sheriff Bianco takes issue with the term homeless itself. He says, quote, we will quit calling it homeless. This is not about homes. They don't even want homes. They're perfectly happy where they are.
Yes, Sheriff Chad is correct. They're vagrants. They're drug addicted, blasted out of their mind.
Do you agree that Californians sleeping on the streets don't want homes?
Well, look, first of all, I just have to set the record straight on Javier's touting his experience. The Biden administration, President Biden, openly talked about firing him, had to sideline him during COVID because he wasn't delivering results. And I am still in shock in this debate that despite being given the opportunity 3 times in a row by Katie, he was unable to clearly answer the most important question on health care as our former Secretary of Health and Human.
Blew the COVID con, complete moron. What type of mentality does it take to vote for Baccaria? Here's another good exchange.
So Mr. Mahan chose to divert from answering the question about affordability to launch attacks. What I would simply say to him is, let's focus on who's raising the cost of living in California the most. And that's Donald Trump. The price of gas has gone up $1 to $2 because of Donald Trump and his war in Iran. The price of goods, groceries, have gone up in California because of Donald Trump's illegal tariffs.
You see, all they can say is not true. That's just not true. We've had the highest gas prices on average over $2 than the rest of the nation for a very long time.
So Mr. Mahan chose to divert from.
So Mahan, Villar, Steve Hilton said, you can't blame Trump for California's problems that California caused. What does Baccaria do? Blame Trump. Because he knows the mind on robots, so that's all they want to hear.
Your opponent here, Congresswoman Katie Porter, threatening to cut off an interview with a reporter. That came after a video surfaced of her berating a member of her staff. If a senior official in your government acted as she did in those videos, would you fire them?
Yes.
And you've put out an ad of your own, now making light of that interaction that you had with your
That's not
staffer,
correct, Caitlin.
which you said you apologized for.
That is not correct. The ad is about showing Californians what they've had a chance to see on this stage tonight and in every other debate stage that we've had, which is that I'm able to take responsibility, I'm able to follow the rules, I'm able to say I'm sorry, and I'm able to do better. Everybody in California had a chance to see me on stage with that reporter in the last debate and see exactly how I...
She didn't even want to go. She had to be dragged in at the last second. Come on, Katie. Got to dip the ding-dong Tom Steyer in. Here we go.
General, to be able to hold both ICE agents and their leadership criminally liable for what you say is, quote, violent, illegal conduct on the job. Does that include the former DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who oversaw the ICE operations in Los Angeles last year?
Look, the governor of California should hold people accountable who break the laws of California, specifically including ICE agents and the people who send them to racially profile, which is illegal, and use violence against Californians.
They're all a bunch of racists. Those who shout racist are the biggest racist, and Tom Steyer just proved it. Here we go.
And I think it's probably a sincere policy difference between us. She said something very revealing, which is the only way really that California's economy has been growing in the last few years is through illegal immigration. And I just don't think that's the right way for us to be growing. I think we need to help small businesses create jobs and opportunity, and for Californians to be able to earn more and live the California dream, and for entrepreneurs to want to start businesses in California. That's how we should be growing our economy.
Steve Hilton is 1,111% correct. And we don't want the 21st century slaves of illegals, and we've been through that enough times. Katie Porter and the other 5 said yes. Healthcare for illegals, keep them in, because they are deriving power. They get to be the oligarchs over them, and that's what they're after.
Believe that on a stage with 30 minutes of interrupting and bickering and name calling and shouting and disrespect for everyone up here who's stepping into public service, that anyone wants to talk about my temperament.
And then she told the psycho chick, got to Sheriff Chad and said, "Cowboy up," because she didn't like his answer. This stuff is absolutely incredible. Tony Villar jumped on Sheriff Chad about the Oath Keepers. We're going to read you the mission statement because that's going to be important. Oath Keepers' mission is to defend the U.S. Constitution and resist any laws or orders they believe violated, particularly those related to the Second Amendment. They emphasize a commitment to uphold the oath to protect American liberties against perceived tyranny. Now, what in the hell is wrong with that? Here's the exchange. Villar thought he was going to make some...
An undocumented worker killed somebody. He should go to jail. He should be prosecuted.
It's too late, don't you think? How about the 3 DUIs before that?
Finish?
No.
Or do you want to be the bully that you always are?
No,
You know, you're an oath keeper. We all know that.
And I'm very proud of it.
No, well, you should.
I'm very proud of it. And guess what? You're going to swear an oath, and you swore an oath. You should know what you were swearing and be proud of defending it.
I don't think an oath keeper is qualified to be governor.
I don't think you know what an oath keeper is.
Let me answer the question. I said, if an undocumented person committed murder, they should be held accountable. They should go to jail. And you keep on saying that sanctuary prevents violent criminals from being turned over.
I said it prevents criminals.
As I said earlier.
I said it prevents criminals. Don't lie for me.
In fact, as I said earlier, thousands have been turned over since 2019.
Obviously not enough.
Steve Hilton, let me be clear. You know, I know you're recently arrived to California, but if you've read the Bay Area Institute, the UC Merced study, immigrants, if we took them all out, including the undocumented, it would be a $274 billion hit to the California
Sheriff Bianco,
economy.
just to follow up on what you were just saying there, and you said you're a proud oath keeper. Are you referring to the group?
I've sworn an oath 3 times to defend my Constitution.
An oath
yes,
as your
and
job.
Everybody that wants to, like, again, lie and emotionally get all spun up about the Oath Keeper organization, I just would, before you do that, and I know none of you have, I want you to go read the mission statement of the Oath Keeper mission statement. And the
I saw them on CNN attacking the Capitol.
And the ACLU. I saw a politician molesting kids. Does that mean you molest kids?
What?
Exactly. Don't pull those stupid statements out and expect to not be called out.
But Sheriff Bianco,
you have
just to be
no
clear,
reason to.
There is
You're not
absolutely.
qualified to be
just wanna
governor of
clarify.
California.
I am extremely proud of swearing an oath to defend my Constitution against politicians like this.
And do you still consider yourself a member of that group, to be clear?
No.
So there you go. He mentioned Dominic Durden, who was a dispatcher for him, killed in Moreno Valley by an illegal. He'd been deported twice. He was 1/10 under the DUI limit when he killed Dominic here in Moreno Valley.
30 seconds, 30 seconds.
His mom lives with that. It's freaking incredible, some of the stuff we have to endure. We'll pick up with that. Susan Shelley should be on today. Here in a few seconds as we join the Mighty Met KMET, as Jesse has said. And we will proceed with the rest.
5 seconds, and Susan's on the line.
Today, IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday live at 5:30 in the Mighty Met, 1490 AM, broadcasting all over the Inland Empire in the aforementioned AM band, joining our vast video audience on the Evil FB Network, Rumble, X, YouTube, all that good stuff. Check us out, subscribe. Had a lot of interesting, let's say, things happening today. One thing that just came out of the blue, and Harmeet Dillon, Associate Justice of Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, top DOJ official predicts Supreme Court will declare AR-15's rifles legal everywhere in America. Just the news reports. I wonder what kind of magazines we're going to get with those. It's going to be a very interesting time. We had the raucous, as we said, mudslinging. Finally, something interesting. California governor's debate last night. It definitely did heat up last night on the deal. We covered a lot of that in the first part. But as we usually do on a Wednesday, we have the famed editorial writer columnist for the Press Enterprise, San Bernardino Sun, Inland Daily Bulletin, Redlands Daily Facts. More important to me, Vice President of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Susan Shelley, welcome to IE Newswire, Roy.
Thank you, Roy. Great to be with you.
Man, what a deal last night. What'd you think of the governor's debate? I thoroughly enjoyed it. Finally, we got to see people as they are, not as robots. But what say you?
Well, this is just an unprecedented situation as far as I can remember, where the ballots are out and there's no Democratic frontrunner, and there's 7 people that are running, I think it is. It's 6, 7 people. How many Democrats are there that are still in the hunt here? And then the other 2 are actually on the ballot, even though they're out of the race. And nobody knows how this is going to shake out. And then there are these accusations indictments against Dana Williamson and 2 other people tied to Javier Becerra's campaign account. So he's in it up to his neck, even though he hasn't been indicted yet. Always say yet. They're testifying, and Dana Williamson is negotiating a plea deal. So he could completely implode and fall right out of the polling. And then what? Is it Steyer? Well, a lot of Democrats don't want Steyer. He's not one of the gang. It's very wide open. All of that early vote harvesting that the Democrats are so good at doing, they can't really do it, can they? Because they don't know who to tell them to vote for. So the party is in a pickle with this. It has to be good for the Republicans, which has to be good for the state.
I think after June 2nd, they're going to be calling me Karnak the Magnificent. I think top 2 in June the odds get better this every day from exactly what you're saying. The Democratic field is scattered. They got this deal with Bacher. Now, they had the big Swalwell there. Everybody was afraid of that, so they dumped, they got Swalwell out. Now, oh, we're going to promote Javier Baccaria. Now, he seems to, when the Democrats that he worked for in the Biden administration are saying he's a dim bulb, was incompetent, and people backing off, Willie Brown backstire, and Willie does not back a losing horse. He's not going to, if he thought Baccaria was going to get it, Willie would have been jumping on board. I think they're more scattered than they were before the Swalwell deal, but what say you?
I agree with you, and it would be awesome if you were Karnak the Magnificent and we got two Republicans in the final two. That would be incredibly positive for the state, because we'd get rid of all these terrible policies that all the Democrats pay lip service to, even though they know it's making life more expensive and more difficult, but they don't care because they're pleasing these different interest groups and they're staying on board with Newsom. But really the only solution for California on affordability, on energy, on everything, is to dump these policies that are counterproductive and raising the cost of gasoline, making electricity scarce in the summer. We have to get rid of all these policies that would be like a tax cut for the whole state without any hit to government revenue at all. Government revenue would go up because of more economic activity. So it's very, very important that we reverse the mistaken policies of the last 20-some years. Do you think it can happen? I hope so.
I think so. And rumor has it, and, with the whole Baccaria and the payoffs and stuff going on, and the McCluskey part is the obvious part. Okay, they're jacking up his salary. The Dana the Hammer Williamson was a little bit strange, and I disagree with Steve Hilton said, they were just using her to launder the money. I don't think so. The rumor has it going around, the payoffs, Baccaria had decided after 24 and he's out the Biden administration, he's going to run for governor. So, and he'd been making noises of doing it anyway before that, but then he's, committed. The payoffs in that were to Dana the Hammer Williamson to get the Gavin Newsom contacts, which she was very familiar with, for his governor run. And that's where this thing all ties up. And what they didn't factor in was now Donald Trump is in charge of the Department of Justice and all the evidence that the Biden administration was investigating the Hammer, McCluskey, Baccaria, and the whole crew on this thing, Susan.
Yes, it's very interesting, and there are federal and potential state charges for this. And the thing about using campaign money and Javier Becerra saying he didn't know, it's very, very implausible. If there's one thing candidates know, it's where they work very hard to raise money, and they know where they put it, and they know where it goes. And I'm not saying they check every receipt for lunch for the staff, but if $10,000 a month is going out of a dormant account for years, I think they know, and they have to sign those forms semi-annual, and they are responsible for it. Whether they know or not, they're responsible for it. These things are signed under penalty of perjury. Everybody in politics has to do it in California. He was the Attorney General. He was responsible for enforcing the Political Reform Act. I don't think it passes the smell test if he didn't know.
Another thing that I think really exposed Baccaria, well, two things, is one is Steve Hilton and Vila Ragosa and Matt Mahan all said, you can't blame Trump for the problems in California that California caused, and we all live them every day. And after that, he still insisted on it. The second thing is attacking him on the 300, 500, or whatever thousand kids that were lost coming over on the illegal invasion under his and Joe Biden's watch, and him saying there were no missing kids. I mean, Tom Homan, 6 months ago, said we at least located about 300,000 of them. I mean, nobody questions that they screwed this whole thing up, and he's trying to act like it doesn't exist. This isn't one or two kids. This is hundreds of thousands of them. He just let them have any. Oh yeah, you need 10 of them. Here you go. No questions asked. Yada yada yada. Anybody that would vote for him for anything, I mean, I question your sanity. And And what do? Hate every other human being on earth? Because that guy, if you're willing to do that to kids, imagine what you think he would do to adults, Susan.
Well, that's a really important point that you raised, because I believe the Department of Health and Human Services managed all of that money for the refugees and the asylees and all the people who were waved in by the Biden administration over the border with one or another kind of paperwork permission. Some were flown in on a humanitarian parole program, which was written into the law to be a case-by-case basis. For a particular situation where someone had a medical condition or whatever else, there was a process for humanitarian parole. Well, the Biden administration opened it up to hundreds of thousands of people at the same time, and whole planes were chartered to bring people in and fly them all around the country into the swing states. So I think it was the Department of Health and Human Services that managed the contracts for the hotels and the food and all the things that were provided to all those people who were flown everywhere. You remember when the governor of Texas flew people to Martha's Vineyard, and how quickly the people on Martha's Vineyard got rid of them again. It was the hotels, that Hampton Inns that were being completely rented out. That was all run, I believe, through Javier Becerra's department. So he has a lot to answer for.
The other thing that struck me, is Tom Steyer as psycho as Katie Porter, Susan?
Well, I'll give you my theory on Tom Steyer. I think he's making an investment. I think this ridiculous amount of money that he's spending to make himself governor is a sign that the climate alarmism is fading in politics as an issue. And I think what's happening here is he is trying to get into the governor's office to keep these policies going, because his wealth, his hedge fund, his clients are all invested in this green stuff. And the green stuff doesn't have a market unless the government mandates it. And so if someone else gets into that governor's chair and decides it's not worth it because it's too expensive and people can't pay it anymore, all of those investments he has go south. There's no market unless the government forces a market. And I think I think it's worth $200 million to him to preserve the mandates that maintain the rest of his fortune.
So what you're saying is Tom Steyer is the second coming of Al Gore.
Yes. With the difference that Al Gore got rich on it later, after he was out of politics, and Tom Steyer got rich on it before he was in politics and is trying to continue it. That's what I think is happening. I don't think it's rational for someone to spend that much money trying to get elected to high office. I think that's something just off there.
$200 million in the primary. Even Meg Whitman didn't spend that on the whole election, which was totally freaking ridiculous. And I mean,
I think he's at 167 so far. I don't think
he's going to be 200
yet.
by the time June 2nd rolls around at the pace he's going. I mean,
Yeah, well,
it's this is insane money that I don't. It'd be interesting on a statewide office, has anybody spent any more on a primary? This has got, if it is, I'd be shocked if somebody spent more than this guy on this. I hadn't considered that until you said it, but at least that makes some sense of spending that kind of money, because everybody's kind of shaking their head. Why are you spending this enormous amount of money to get 10 or 12% of the vote? I mean, that's gotta, if he doesn't get in the top two, I mean, I don't know if I would be able to show my face afterwards, Susan.
Well, if he gets into the top two and Steve Hilton gets into the top two, if your Karnak prediction is not right, and I'm sure it is, but if it isn't, and it's Steyer and Hilton, then it's going to be an epic battle, both on the climate agenda stuff, which is making California so unaffordable, and on Prop 13, because one of the things Steyer has promised is to destroy Prop 13 and give the money to the teachers' union. And that is going to be a very interesting fight to have in the general election.
One thing, and I was, when it first started, the Baccaria stuff's all been out there on it's been out there in the kids, and he was a dim bulb, but I mean, nobody really paid attention to it until now. But the deal with the whole McCluskey, Sean, Dana the Hammer, and him and the money going across to that, I was thinking, even though Trump's in president and they're in charge of DOJ, I'm thinking, well, even if he does get in the top two versus Republican, there's probably only less than 5% that it comes out. But since many high-ranking Democrats in the last couple of days are coming out either against him or sideways, if it's Baccaria versus Chad or Hilton, I'm increasing the odds that the Baccaria indictment will soon follow if he's in the top two after the election certified in July, Susan.
Could be, and there is a political consultant on the Democratic side who has said on Twitter, on X, that the FBI has phone calls from Dana Williamson. They have recordings on which Javier Becerra's name is mentioned a lot, and Donald Trump has control of that FBI investigation if he chooses to exercise it, and some of that stuff could come pouring out after the top two is set, which could absolutely torpedo Becerra. Even if he isn't indicted, they could certainly make him look terrible if they've got those recordings. So I don't think this is over. I don't think Javier Becerra is going to be the Democrats' choice for much longer. You raise an interesting point about Willie Brown, who is the machine politician's machine politician, and he comes out with an endorsement of Steyer. Very interesting. We will see.
Michael Trujillo, one of longtime Tony Villar's head political henchmen of there, he was the first one, even for a long time, but once Swalwell, the spy, jumped in, he was the first one to say, hey, the bimbo eruptions are coming, and he's been warning on the Baccaria stuff, along with all the others. You see that's what I'm saying. I'm looking at the tea leaves are lining up on Baccaria just like that. But I want to shift gears a little bit, get to your columns. The unjust math behind Senator Henry Stern's Senate Bill 1404, Susan Shelley.
Well, there used to be a fire fee that hit rural areas of California very hard. It was per habitable structure. And so someone who was not rich at all, but had some land and had maybe 2 trailers and a small house on it, would get hit with 3 of these fire fees. And people were really upset. And the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association thought it was an illegal tax and tried to attack it legally, and that didn't work out. But it was suspended in a legislative deal where they decided, you know what, instead of the fire fee, we'll take the money from the climate thing, from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, from the Cap and Trade Program. So that's what happened. And now Henry Stern, who is the state senator from the area where I live, which stretches from Moore Park to Universal City in Los Angeles, he is pushing to reinstate this fire fee on top of the money from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is filled up with the extra money you pay for gasoline and the extra money you pay for electricity. So it's like being double charged for this state fire fund. And it's absolutely, it's just like he's a horse thief. He's just running in and taking your stuff. And he had the nerve to say in a hearing in the Senate Rev and Tax Committee, he had the nerve to say people can afford it. He said, I grew up in the Palisades, Malibu. People can afford it. Oh, my goodness. What an attitude. It's a totally unfair fee. People are already paying for fire protection. They're already paying for wildfire mitigation. They're paying in their electric bill. They're paying in their gas and electricity bills twice, really. And if you look at that and you say, what's another $150 per habitable structure to people who live in the Palisades and Malibu? You know what? Not everybody is rich. And it's a lot of money, and they have no right to it. So, fortunately, that column came out on a Friday, and fortunately the bill was heard on Monday in the Appropriations Committee, and they sent it to the suspense file, which didn't necessarily kill it, but it's a good sign that it's not doing too well. So I'm happy to say that bill may not go forward. And there won't have to be any lawsuits over it if they just kill it now.
I'm sure you'll be keeping a very close eye on this, and for very good reason. I mean, the thing that just I don't know. These cats must not have any conscience at all. I mean, they've got to be sitting there 365, just looking for ways to raid our pocketbooks. I mean,
That's what he said. We need more money. We
Yes.
need everything we can get, was his expression.
That should be criminal. But your other column this week, the end of mandatory discrimination, SCOTUS limits the use of race in redistricting. Thank goodness, Susan Shelley.
Yes. Well, for quite a while, there were court decisions that made it the law that you had to redistrict to create majority-minority districts on the premise that everybody was so racist that unless you had a district where individual minorities were the majority and they could elect their own choice, they wouldn't possibly like anybody else. No one else would represent them correctly. Well, this is a really outdated, if it was ever correct, it was a really outdated idea. And the Supreme Court put a stop to it. And they said it is illegal to use race in redistricting unless you can show in current conditions that redistricting was done in a way based on race that was totally unjustified by politics. In other words, unless you could show intentional racial discrimination, like we are trying to break up the power of the black voters or break up the power of the Latino voters because they're too powerful and we need to divide it. Unless you could show in some way that there was intentional racial discrimination in redistricting, it is not legal. And this means that a lot of the maps that are currently being used for the 2026 election are illegal and might have to be redone before the election. It will be very interesting to see if a court orders California to do new maps, because Prop 50 has a majority-minority district that's created. At least that's what the mapmaker Paul Mitchell said in a deposition. So if that's true, then the whole map may be illegal. They can't go back to the map that they used to have because that also would have had this type of redistricting, majority-minority districts. So they might have to draw an entirely new map. I don't know if they could do that, but it's possible in California that the June 2nd congressional primaries will be null and void, and there will be new primaries, possibly first week of August, in order to have clean elections, clean legal elections for Congress in California in 2026.
It can't get any funner than that, I don't think. If that scenario came out, I mean, with all the caterwaulering and Trump this and he's going to take over the country and no kings this and all that they did, and then the Supreme Court is coming up. Indiana, the ones that didn't redistrict like the 6 state senators votes against it all got primaried and are out. Mm-hmm. Florida's moving on the maps. Maybe the Virginia Supreme Court will strike down that the gerrymander of all gerrymanders coming out.
Yeah, most likely.
We may, even up to today, the midterms were looking really sad for center right freedom and liberty types. I'm starting to get more optimistic every day with the way things are breaking, Susan.
It does look like, in a really fundamental way, some errors in the past are being corrected. And that's true of the bureaucracy in Washington, some of the civil service lawsuits that the president has been pursuing, and these lawsuits about the racial redistricting. A lot of this looks like, luck is the residue of design, and a lot of it looks like the residue of design. There were 4 years while Biden was president where Trump and his top people had meetings at Mar-a-Lago and planned out, when they got back to the White House, what they were going to do to make sure they never got blocked again. And I think we are seeing, in some of these big picture decisions, we're seeing the residue of that design, which in my opinion is a really good thing for the country, because it can't be right to have mandatory racial discrimination, which is what the redistricting was. You had to have mandatory racial discrimination to draw the districts a certain way to please the courts. And what Samuel Alito said in the majority opinion is the lower court have misapplied some of our precedents on Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, essentially saying the lower courts have been wrong, and we've been doing this wrong all along, and we're now correcting it. Very, very powerful stuff.
Got about a minute left. Tell them why they should join HJTA Go.
It's an election year, and the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is fighting for you on the ballot this year. We have an initiative, the Local Taxpayer Protection Act, to save Prop 13, and it's one of the most important taxpayer protections you will ever see in this state. It makes it harder to raise your taxes, and you can be part of this. You can volunteer, you can get involved. Go to hjta.org and click that button that says Join, and be a member of this great organization and strengthen your voice in Sacramento. We fight for you in the legislature, in the courts, and on the ballot. Don't forget to sign up for the free email alerts, and we will see you between now and November with all the information you need to be an active, self-defending taxpayer in California.
Thanks for being on, Susan. We'll do it again next week.
Thanks so much, Roy.
Susan Shelley, Vice President of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and columnist extraordinaire for the Southern California News Group. Well, we got another debate, back-to-back debates. We can only hope that it's as good as the one last night, at least as good, or hey, at least 50% of Jerry Springer as the one was yesterday. It's good. I love it. You need to see people react to the situations, and you need to let them go. Not this 20. I hate that 20 seconds, 10 seconds is that remind you of your worst day in school times 10. You know, we're adults. Most of us are getting to be old adults. Time to let it fly. You know, this isn't TK class, for crying out loud. We're trying to prevent a Baccaria or like Psycho Dude and Chick, Steyer and Porter from becoming governor. We actually got a shot. And like I say, I'm actually more confident today top 2 in June can win than I've ever been going in. And voting actually starts. Get your friends, neighbors, relatives, enemies, get them to vote for Steve and Chad. If they just will not vote for a Republican, get them to vote for Villar or whomever's down there in the bottom. Man may raise up Katie Porter, Tony Thurman, Betty Yee. The protest vote is the spy Swalwell. Say if you don't like anybody, vote for Swalwell. He's the none of the above protest vote. You know, and that's only the people that are just will not vote for a Republican. Looks like we got to pick Chad up a little bit. If you're undecided, pick Chad now, but get those ballots in. It's important. That'll do it for today. As we usually say at this time, mandatory you're back here in 23 hours. Why? You're the best darn show in the whole wide world. Till then, see ya.
Have a great night.
You got it.